what has improved, generally citizens' awareness on what is on-source revenue has improved. If you compare 10 years ago, people were not sure national government revenue is on-source revenue. So as we keep on advancing the terminology on-source revenue, even national government revenue could be on-source revenue, depending on what you are comparing it to. So as we do our civic education and we are saying people are becoming more aware on what is on-source revenue, it's also important that we balance that with people becoming aware of how national government raises revenue. So generally, awareness on how national government raises revenue and how county governments raise revenue is increasing, largely among the elected leaders. Previously, many years ago, we had members of county assemblies who did not even know how their county governments are supposed to raise revenue. And they were discussing how to raise revenue locally. Now, many more elected leaders are getting interested in discussing on-source revenue. Within the executive at the county level, talk to certain government departments. Previously, different government departments, heads of directorates, don't even know that they have a responsibility to collect revenue, and sometimes even at departmental level, based on the services they provide and people pay. So I think for me, there's a little bit of enhanced or improved awareness among people on various ways of raising revenue. The other bit that is a success, there's improvement in public conversations on revenue raising. Before, we could get to see county governments lumping everything during budget formulation stage and discussing everything around that period. But now we are seeing some counties separating planning and formulation of budgets from revenue-specific conversations. And I think citizens getting interested to really attend revenue conversations. However, if you compare that with national government, we don't see platforms where citizens are discussing revenue raising. So county governments, in my view, are doing much better in enabling people to discuss revenue raising options for their counties comparatively to what national government does. We see county governments doing public conversations in the sub-counties and the ward, but let's ask ourselves, how many times do you see our national government convening local public conversations around revenue raising? So I think some of the successes that I will talk about are that. But there's something that John mentioned that I also wanted to point out. When you see governments putting more targets for raising money through health service delivery, and they're excited that they're raising more money through health service delivery, why are they excited? That means people are getting sick more. You see, when you get more money from facilities, when you have many people going to health facilities, and you're excited that as a county you are getting more money from services people pay in the health centers, it should bother you. It basically means your communities are getting more sick. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Eunice Wanjiko. I am a program officer with Inuka Kenya Nisisi. Inuka Kenya is a civil society organization that aims to collectivize Kenyans from their different diversities to be concerned about how they are governed. We encourage a lot of holding leaders to account and pushing for service delivery with dignity. We also advocate for the rule of law. Now, looking at on-source revenue, the CRA of 2022 tells us that the total allocation was just 13%, telling us that there is a lot of untapped potential in terms of revenues we can collect from within the counties. There have been a lot of gains, especially on health, such that now we are seeing a lot of health facilities being brought up, at least in every place. We have seen innovation, county level innovation. If we can take Makueni as an example, if we can take Murang'a, if we can take Kisumu and the health plans they are developing for people of those counties. So it tells us that there is a lot of untapped potential in terms of what we can get from proper structures to collect revenues. Thank you.
Thank you, Eunice, and I'll stay with you for a minute there. In terms of, we're talking about revenues, we're talking about that there is improvement, especially at the county level, in terms of the on-source revenue that they get to collect. Why is it important how we collect revenue? When you think of property tax, when you think of entertainment tax, the implementation of that, and how we often have, city council and the different approaches that the county government is taking when it comes to revenue collection. Why is that important? Why is it important how we do that? And why is it important that we get to collect revenue? To what end is it important that we need to collect revenue? We've heard of the phrase, tulipe ushuru tujitegeme. Maybe you could reflect on that just a bit, especially in terms of service delivery.
Thank you for that question. At Inuka, we believe that Kenyan problems have Kenyan solutions. That's why we say ni sisi. Ni sisi tunajua shida zetu, ni sisi tunajua vile tutazitatua. So at the county level, remember we are all diverse counties, and each county knows the issues that affect them. So it is important that at the county level, resources are raised depending on what is the priority at that particular time. Like Makueni, they are good at raising, they have a lot of fruit mangoes, but it is a short-lived thing. So how do we ensure that this bumper harvest we have does not go bad and still help us to remain sustainable? So on-source revenue is very good for growth, and not just growth for, it's growth that goes to the lowest person, the farmer. A lot of times we hear farmers crying foul when government doesn't meet their needs, or government doesn't buy products at the right, or at the market prices. But now if we have this, where we have a sustained demand for the products, it ensures that people are not going hungry. It ensures that people are able to sustain themselves.
Yeah, thanks, Eunice, on sustainability and
thanks. And basically, just to add to what Eunice has mentioned, on-source revenue is actually important, and it's quite significant, as it only contributes.
That gets us to the point where we have to think, as John puts it, in terms of their delays. How can counties utilize on-source revenue to offset or to ensure that the delays are not significantly affecting service delivery?
Thank you, Fidan. Yes, I would start with that we all know that counties probably were not designed to collect revenue. That's why Constitution was very clear to distribute the national raised revenue. Because the revenue that national government raised is supposed to or must be shared between the two levels of government, and of course to all the 47 counties. And when we see that, sometimes we usually say like counties are supposed to depend on themselves, which might not be the true case. And when you try to see across all the 47 counties, they have different potentials. And even there are counties that have never collected, like since devolution period 13 up to now, they have never collected even more than 500 million, like overall. Meaning, even if they want to depend on themselves, it's too little for such counties. For example, you can take those counties like Tana River, they do collect very, very little. And there are those counties which also revenue is so significant to them. For example, maybe Nairobi, or those bigger counties, Nakuru, Kiambu, like they do have that potential to collect more, which it's so substantial that probably they can be able to say we can be able to depend on ourselves in some cases. And also the challenge is even in the national raised revenue, the one which the equitable share, which counties are supposed to receive, sometimes there are those delays which in every quarter they are supposed to receive certain amount depending on the plan that the government has. And in most cases you tend to find the national government ministries, department agencies receive more than what counties receive, maybe in every quarter. So, because probably national treasury might be favoring the MDAs, the ministries, department agencies, compared to counties, so they are not so far. And because when you try to extend that to what will happen eventually, the counties probably there will be challenges resulting to pending bills and all that. Was if it delays, then at the end of the year, for instance, in the last financial year, the 2023-24, I think it was about 30.2 billion were not released, and the year had already ended. So it means it was released in the current financial year, and just starting to see that, it means already counties probably could have suffered a lot. And now when you come and combine with the revenue, the on-source revenue, which counties are only collecting about 72% of, as Mutua said, and that will already create also pending bills and all that. And remember also the deficit at the national. Sometimes when there is deficit at the national level, they'll borrow. They'll find a way to borrow from debt. Counties do not have that leeway. And when there is shortage in on-source revenue, it means that automatically will be transferred to. There's high chance that it will be the development will suffer eventually, and of course, what will happen will be the services for that side will suffer in such cases, and probably that do happen in most cases. And we also try to see the rate at which pending bills is growing vis-a-vis the on-source the shortfall in the on-source revenue. It might be almost like it's the main root cause to the issues of pending bills. But of course, there are those strategies that government is trying to come up with, which is supposed to address the pending bills in the long term or in the coming years. But also sometimes we have to think about the pending bills that are already existing and all that, which was it should also be addressed. Because our government will be going to ensure that the current pending bill stock, which already is there, how is it going to be addressed? Because they have been able to set up those committees to kind of address such, which we know it comes as a result of majorly from the challenges with on-source revenue. And also sometimes also try to think about every year, like must counties set higher targets which they have never achieved? Like it's also a question that probably we need to be asking ourselves. But I think the positive thing that was also we are also observing is when I try to connect this with our survey, the county budget transparency survey that we run at International Budget Hub, I have observed, or we have seen that they have been trying to provide some information, which of course they start level of transparency, which is growing, and you're able to know for this year our target was this, and this is what we achieved. Like you're able to tell that, and also when you try to, like when they are setting the next year targets, you're able to tell we didn't achieve this last year. Why should we have to set a target of 500 million when you had only collected 100 million? Or even since devolution, we have never even collected, like, let's say 100 million. Why do you set a target which you will know eventually it will lead to other challenges? And even it also contribute to supplementary budgets, which sometimes it tends also affect the service delivery side. Thank you.
Thank you, Birgon, and thank you for helping us to see that connection between shortfalls in on-source revenue collection and the accumulation of pending bills. Of course, there are probably perhaps many other factors at play, but there is definitely a connection between the two. And I'll come to you, Bonyo. We know for sure that we need to collect revenue so that we can deliver services, that is important, and they're critical services, especially when you look at the county level and the functions that have been assigned to them, if it is health or early childhood education. Do you think there's also a vice versa linkage in terms of service delivery, as long as that is being done, incentivizing revenue that is the counties are able to collect?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think for me, yes, there is. When you have annual revenue targets, and then you report on revenue collection on a quarterly basis, we need to look at the implication of not achieving your quarterly revenue targets on the expected service delivery. Remember, you are raising revenue to be able to provide services to people. And because we see reports on quarterly revenue targets achieved or not achieved, we must now begin to balance these reports with the status of service delivery. So that if a particular government department had targeted to provide certain services based on certain standards by a particular period, and then those services were not provided as per standards because of lack of achieving the revenue target, then the question then would be, would the people continue paying for the rates county governments require if they're not getting services? So if revenue targets are achieved and service provision improves, then the people are motivated to pay more revenue because they're seeing that. And you also need to look at the question of equity. In a county government where a particular sub-county or a particular ward has people who are paying more revenue than another part of the county, would it be in order, therefore, for these people who are paying more revenue to demand for better services compared to those who are not paying? We need to look at why is one corner of the county, why are people not paying revenue or paying for the rates while another corner people are paying. What we're seeing is some of these things are connected to the people who collect revenue. You know, there are people who collect revenue based on relationships. This is our son, is from our village, is the one in charge of the market, and as long as their family members are the ones coming to sell produce, it will cushion them from paying revenue. So one of the contributors for people not paying revenue is relationship. Huyu mtoto wetu, acha leo auze tu. So we must also be honest with ourselves. If we really know that for me to sell my goods in the market, I must pay. Even if the person collecting the revenue is my son or daughter, let me just pay. So we also need to look at that. But you realize the people who are not paying are getting better services because their son, who is in charge of that area, will still ensure they get better services, but the other community whose son is not in charge. So there's a bit of clanism, tribalism, ethnicity around some of these things if you are to dissect the county governance arrangement up to the ward or sub-county levels. But specific to facilities, if you pay for services in a particular facility and the services in that facility do not improve, chances are you'll have to struggle looking for an alternative way to get your services, even if it's a private sector service, because this one you're not getting it. So if service delivery would improve, if governments were to provide services based on standards, then people are likely to be motivated to contribute more, because this revenue, whatever terminology you use, whether you want to call it streams or types, at the end of the day, it's people who pay revenue. And people will be motivated to pay more if they get value for what they are paying for. Another angle that I also wanted to bring to this conversation, if you analyze the persons who pay revenue by groupings, in the county level, we have women and men in the market, we have women and men in the transport industry, we have women and men in the agricultural sector. So when you analyze sectorally again and by groups, these things play out differently. So even as we talk about revenue raising and revenue targets not being achieved, that if you analyze how county governments are raising revenue by types or by streams and by sectors, I will tell you there are some sectors that are achieving over 100%. But when you now compute on average, then the county average becomes a bit lower. But if you analyze it by sectors, there are sectors that are achieving more. So we also need to ask ourselves, what is making one sector achieve more and what is making the other one to achieve less? And lastly, in as much as we say that county governments have the potential to raise much more, we have looked at county governments from whatever angle and they're saying they can raise more. If the people refuse, they will not raise more. So when we say that county governments can raise more, are the people aware that county governments can raise more? And what do you need to do to make people be aware that your county can raise more, and you have a responsibility to participate in ensuring that your county raises more, because if your county raises more, then you have stand a better chance of getting better services. So the question of people accessing information around these things, the potential of a county to raise revenue, how can my grandmother in the village who doesn't understand English and Swahili and sells in the market understand that potential? You know, how can she be part of the conversation that the agricultural produce we have is one of the potential areas of more revenue raising? Because that motivates them to say, okay, this is our county, let's do much more to raise more money. So the conversation around access to information, especially by people who don't understand English and Swahili around revenue discussions, is something that perhaps we need to take forward from a civic education perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Elijah. And to you, Eunice, when it comes to revenue raising, and we also have to talk about transparency, accountability, and all that. And I know we alluded to that at the beginning, but what can counties do to improve? What do citizens want in terms of transparency and accountability? And what are the options? I know we don't have county government officials in this panel, but since it's being recorded, what are the options? What are some of the things that they should take into consideration when we're talking of transparency and accountability and just its place in enhancing the revenue that the counties are able to collect?
Thank you. I think it, first of all, begins with us Kenyans in terms of conducting social audits, because all these monies are raised, but are we given an account of how they are used? So also ensuring that there is continuity. If you look at the parking system in Nairobi, for example, it started in the previous regime. It continues, but along the way, we realized there was a specific number that was being used. Then a notice was given that everyone should stop using that and use a different one. So just covering these gaps that are there in terms of the systems that are set in place. Technology is helping us a lot, because I believe from the time we moved to digital collection as opposed to where money was paid to an individual on the street, the revenues have gone up. So just ensuring that we invest a little bit more in the infrastructure to bring in this or to collect this revenue. And also another thing is looking at the Marwa scheme of Kisumu, the Makueni Care. Recently, Murang'a County won an award for the insurance to the people. But how do we ensure that this continue after the current regime leaves office? How do we ensure that there are structures in place that this that is working is not removed by the next people in office because it was not their idea in the first place? So just harnessing this, if it means putting policies in place to ensure that these ones are put in a way that no one can remove them, that will speak to issues of sustainability, will speak to issues of social audits and transparency, and also calling upon us as citizens, as Kenyans. We need to hold our leaders to account. Nairobi is topping the list again on the counties that have used the least amount on development. A lot of money that Nairobi gets goes to administration or recurring costs. What is this? And every time they say make Nairobi work, make Nairobi better, but the monies don't seem to be working for the people of Nairobi. So how can we as the public hold the people in office to account so that they are answerable? Because we have seen, had the Gen Zs not spoken about the finance bill, everything would have been okay. But if we start talking about all these things that concern us, then we are going to find resolutions to them. Thank you.
We have to talk about revenue in as much as we talk about expenditures as well, and how that revenue is being raised. I'll come to you, John, and ask a question that maybe is contrary to something Biagon said earlier in terms of counties are not designed to collect revenue. But so from a policy perspective, how do you think that Kenyan counties or Kenya in general can enhance the capacity of counties to independently generate revenue without overburdening the population? And just an addition to that is what reforms or policy changes will be needed to strengthen devolution in the context of revenue collection, and just to ensure that we are actually working or moving towards equitable development?
Okay, thanks, Faith. So in terms of, at least from a policy perspective, I mean, if I can use 3 examples that have actually been cited. I'm sure some of you may have come across those examples. There are some measures that certain counties have used, and those measures have helped in terms of increasing on-source revenue collection without necessarily harming its residents. So we have Homa Bay County. So Homa Bay County, I think, in the last financial year, its revenue collection surpassed 1 billion, from as low as about 400 million, maybe 3 or 4 years back. Now, for Homa Bay County, some of the things that they've done, actually, they haven't necessarily raised any levies or tax rates and so on. But one thing they've done is, obviously, automation. Automation has been critical in ensuring that they seal any leakages. Number 2 is to drill upon its staff that collection of revenue is actually their business. And that has actually come with some motivation or some incentives, and obviously giving targets as well as training. So I would say those two things have been critical. And of course, the third one is they have created an independent revenue collection board. So those are 3 things that the county has done, and they have actually reaped results in terms of increased revenue collection. Now the other case is Murang'a County. Again, more or less similar approaches in terms of automation, motivation of its staff, training of its staff, and again that has also seen them double their revenue collection. And the third one is Laikipia County. Obviously, there are more. Laikipia County, which was also heavy on automation. So just to sum it up, in terms of policy interventions, yes, there are things that counties can do in terms of addressing their revenue collection systems and practices. And obviously automation is a critical one, because there are some counties that are still using both manual and digital methods. And then, so we obviously know the gains that one can get from automation. Of course, I know Nairobi County has had its challenges with their ISP in terms of the charges they make.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but so it's about obviously selecting a system that is useful and is not very expensive, because in revenue collection you have to compare the cost of collection vis-a-vis what you collect. Then the aspect of revenue administration is critical, and that's where the staff comes in terms of insurance enforcement, education of taxpayers, and that will obviously go a long way to improve compliance, as well as just motivating staff. Of course, there have been cases where counties have staff that has been seconded that are paid different from the staff that was inherited from the defunct local authorities. And I know there were issues there in terms of the differentials in salaries that was a bit demotivating. So when you look at a combination of all those, including ensuring that any gaps that are related to policy and legal frameworks are sealed, that will go a long way in terms of increasing revenue collection. So I just wanted to mention that when it comes to legislation, property tax actually is very critical, particularly for the urban-based counties. There are about 7 to 10 urban-based counties that have a huge potential in terms of collecting revenue from property, from land rates and so on. And the main challenge or the main bottleneck to collection of taxes, because most of them have not passed a law on valuation, what is called the valuation roll. So for instance, Nairobi, I think that law, I'm not very sure whether it's been passed, but I know it has been at the county assembly for a while. For Nairobi, actually, the land rates that are paid are actually based on valuation that was done in the 1980s. And obviously, we know very well that any piece of land, let's say Uhuru Park, the value of Uhuru Park today, according to the current market rates, is obviously not the same as it was in 1983. So there are counties that are missing quite a bit because they haven't passed certain laws and regulations that will go a long way to enhance revenue collection. I know a few counties, for instance, when it comes to liquor licenses and the like, some do not have the underpinning laws, and obviously that affects the collection of revenue from that particular stream. So I would say those three areas are critical in terms of enhancing revenue collection without necessarily increasing the levies or the rates. Yes, what was the other?
I think you have answered both comprehensively, and thank you for that, and also for just giving us the options. And I'll come to you, Biegon, just building on what John has spoken to. We've talked about automation, we've talked about how counties can utilize such kind of approaches. How do you think counties can leverage data and research, especially when it comes to the aspect of setting revenue targets and realistic targets at that? Because that is one of the challenges that is constantly highlighted, that counties are not setting realistic targets, and so then they're not able to meet those targets.
Thank you, Faidan. And I would first add something to what also John said. And because when you look at back when devolution was starting and how much counties were collecting, because it was using what the local authorities used to like, all the tools that were used were transitioned in those counties which had the local authorities. And I want to try to assess whether there have been much change. And it's also in our survey. There's usually a question we usually ask whether our counties are transitioning from like providing information on how they have transitioned from defunct local authorities laws to theirs, especially in trying to raise revenue in the measures. And you find most counties have probably do not provide that clearly. And when you try to connect to that, you see that's also already a cap that counties have not done they have not done their part, especially in also providing such information which we need. But also we need to ask also ourselves, in most cases, you shall ask budgets forward, then I think also it's also relevant, it's also good to ask data forward. What data are we missing, especially for counties also to be able to enhance their own source revenue? And even when you see that our counties have provided information on revenue, I was saying earlier that has significantly grown. Like there has been good level of information. Like you are able to tell in this revenue stream, you are able to see how county has provided information or how they have performed, especially through the control of budget and reports. You are able to tell that information. Similarly, even to the one that come from health facilities. But also it's good also to understand or also to still ask, to what extent do we need such information or that such data? For instance, someone might say, I want data at the facility level. Like, I want what was collected in a certain market. Like, probably that is going, like, to the list that is created, like, the list of information that you might require, depending also on what you want to achieve with that. And in what we probably have access right now as probably citizen and CSOs is like the overall stream is what is collected, what is targeted by the county. But you cannot tell how much probably has been collected in a certain facility or certain market, all that, because they just provide you a lump sum for all, let's say, all the markets in a county, depending on that. And because when you also try to see what automation has done, like in those counties which have automated, probably it's also good also for us to understand or to try to get in depth, then try to understand before automation and after automation. Has there been any change? Because they usually say you want to seal some loopholes around that, which we agree that technology is supposed to enhance the revenue that counties do to collective and national level. I think something that must be still looked into. And when you try to look at, of course, there was a certain year, I think 2018, 2019, where revenue that counties collected were higher than all the other years. That, of course, even right now, like it was higher than when you compare with the rest of the years. Probably we need to ask ourselves, why was that the case? And also you tend to find that the information or the data that is not provided by most counties is the reasoning behind any revenue that they plan to collect. And I know there have been a lot of collective efforts that even all of us, probably citizens and also CSOs and even regional budget have been able to do at their counties, trying to be involved. Because remember, sometimes when we are even doing the priorities or providing our issues based on priorities that government is supposed to implement the coming years and all that, and what the medium term, revenue is still the anchoring. Like we must ensure that we know where the resources will come from, and even we have to go deep into the revenue that are supposed to be collected from the local sources, which will be able to finance the budget in that case. And I feel also sometimes during the implementation, you don't know to find good information, like explaining during this time we were not able to collect this revenue, and the reason is this and this and this. And most cases, government will do write on emerging issues. For instance, during COVID, they will write on COVID. Maybe even be expecting these reports for the current year, that they will write on Gen Zs, that probably there were demonstrations, so we didn't collect revenue. Like they just provide that way, and then they just leave you hanging. Like you will then not tell why, probably the reason why you were not actually able to collect the revenue. Maybe that could have just been an assumption from them, but there could be the real issue why the county could not collect, like in certain stream, because not all streams might be affected. And I also like the point that was mentioned about in some instances then to find maybe in certain period county to collect certain type of revenue, which is from certain producers. Like, are we able to tell at this point, so we expect this? How even do we use that? Like, that is still something that probably I think it's still missing, even in our planning, like the way when they are planning. So they should be able to expect maybe in Q2, we'll expect this much revenue, even from our own sources. And this is where it will come from, and this is how we'll be able to allocate to various services that the county needs to deliver.
Thank you. Thank you, Kip. So if you have any questions, you can note them down on the sticky notes that had been earlier passed around. And we'll have someone come around and collect them. But in the meantime, so we had two other panelists, and I would just like to mention briefly. So we had a question for the only government official from the county level who was supposed to be on this panel, Ms. Jane Gidhui, who's the Director of Budget and Economic Planning from Mombasa. And her questions are with regard to the challenges that the counties are facing, but also some of the strategies that have been utilized in Mombasa when it comes to revenue, improving on-source revenue collection. And of the challenges highlighted, there was one that had to do with corruption, lack of capacity of the officers who collect revenue. They have limited capacity when it comes to effectively doing that, and also compliance with new rates and fees. But I would like to focus a bit more on the lessons that they have learned and some things that can be done even by other counties. So they have found value in training revenue staff. They have also worked towards expanding the revenue base rather than increasing the rates, and increasingly work towards more accountability, transparency, and they're also doing, ensuring that staff, in terms of accountability, that staff have identification, they have certain revenue targets, there are clear procedures, and all that. But they also appreciate or note that there is a role that the national government, through the Kenya Revenue Authority, through the National Treasury, are playing when it comes to supporting counties to improve their own source revenue collection. We also would like to just play a very brief clip from the Controller of Budget Representative, that is FCPA Marsha, and he was supposed to speak around the issues of the county's revenue potential, but also the connection with pending bills and whether the shift from cash to accrual accounting will be the solution towards that. So we'll just briefly have that, and we'll cut it short if it extends, because we are running out of time.
Members and everybody, I would like to take this opportunity to first thank the conveners of this session and all the participants. We regard devolution as a very important aspect within the framework of not only democracy, but our governance as a country. 2010 marked a very important transition when we moved from unitary to now the devolved system of government. And this devolved system of government had very clear provisions within the constitution. The funding of those counties was to be twofold. One was revenue from the national government that is equitably distributed, and also counties were granted an opportunity to generate their own source revenue. What has been the situation and what is the status since then? I've been asked to speak to these matters. One is on source revenue, and the second is on this issue or the matter on pending bills. On source revenue, I must admit that there has been progress. If you look back to about 10 or so years ago, you will see there has been a consistent trend where counties have been increasing the revenue outturn year after year. However, if you compare the outturn to their potential, which can be found in a report that was funded by the World Bank in 2022, there was a report that was generated in consultation with a couple of other institutions, but led by the CRA, that indicated the 47 counties had a potential of over 260 billion shillings. If you look at that performance, like as of last year, June, the year ended June of 2024, counties generated the highest ever amount of money, that was at 59 billion shillings. This 59 billion shillings was against a target of about 81 billion. And if you look at it on percentage terms, you will notice that that target was achieved to the extent of over 70%. Yes, that is progress, but if you are to compare that against the potential of over 260 billion shillings, you will note that we are far off from that target. This progress has been hampered. Past progress has been hampered by a couple of issues. Some of those issues is the technology that is deployed. Sometimes is even our own understanding as counties in terms of the legal provisions that enable us to collect revenues. In addition to that, aspects of capacity, and all these matters have contributed to inability for us to optimize our revenue collection. About 2 or 3 years ago, in terms of the status of the counties, the controller of budget noting that it's an important aspect, because you cannot control budget that are not adequately funded. For you to have an effective system of budget control and meeting the developmental goals of not only the country but the counties at the bottom, at the ground level, you need to adequately fund those counties. We, in partnership with the UNCDF, adopted a tool that was called TADAT, Tax Administrative Diagnostic Assessment Tool. This is a tool that enables counties to assess, or tax administrative units to assess themselves against internationally based practices. As you're aware, everything that we do is comparable. At least there's somebody who's gone ahead of us, developed standards at international level. And when we did this, these assessments were carried out in about 20, have since been carried out in about 21 counties. Those 21 counties reports have been availed. And I think this is partly why there's been that contributive aspect in terms of the increase on revenue among the counties to to the level that we saw last year of about close to 59 billion shillings. Nonetheless, there are a couple of counties that are yet to adopt these to be assessed based on the tax administrative diagnostic assessment tool, and their efforts are being made in liaison with development partners to ensure that we are able to undertake these assessments across all 47 counties, and repeatedly. These assessments should be repeated in cycles of, say, 5 years to ensure that we keep on track as counties and are able to move in the right direction. So yes, indeed, there is progress, but the question is that progress adequate? One would say it is not. These are baby steps that there are ways that we can be able to enhance these baby steps and ensure we are able to achieve our goals. The second area that I've been asked to talk to and is on pending bills. Of course, pending bills, we are all aware this has been a matter of concern at not only at the national level, the counties, but at the societal level. As a society, there have been negative consequences, people being auctioned, of their properties being auctioned, and families have had a lot of difficulties in ability to meet your day-to-day needs, pay school fees, and of course, these consequences have had impact. What has been happening, the trend is that if you look at the trend, when we started as an office, we started tracking pending bills in the year 2014, and these pending bills year after year have been growing. There are various causes that have been cited for these pending bills, but one of the critical causes that I can cite has been the inability for counties to raise adequate on-source revenue. If you look at the target that the counties, individual devolved units.
Thank you so much. The audio will keep playing as we move into the next session. But at this point, I would like to request you that to help me appreciate our panelists hapa together with the moderator. Tafadhali tupige makofi. And then the photographers, taomba mkuje hapa mbele mkapigwe picha. Let's appreciate them as they take their photo. Thank you so much, Madam Jen. Is that Kinyanjui? And then, of course, our good panelists. Tupige picha hapa. Ladies and gentlemen, in the meantime, as they take their photos, we'd just like to inform you that we are moving into the next panel discussion, which is heavily built. We're going to discuss issues around private sector actors as drivers of PFM, the responsibility and the duties of private sectors as far as public finance management is concerned. DJ, tuweke kitu kidogo. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, DJ. Just bring it down. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are moving to the next panel discussion. We are looking at, and our theme for that is private sector actors as drivers of PFM. And our topic will be around an enabling business environment as a stimulant for economic growth. Like we agreed yesterday and today early in the morning, if you have any burning issue, burning question that you need clarification or guidance on, just do it, put it down on the sticky notes, and then you'll stick here, or you'll give me nikuweke hapa. These issues are going to be looked into and they'll be addressed and they'll be shared on our pages so that you can follow up and get to understand different issues around. I would like to invite the moderator of this next session, Mr. Duncan Mochama. Mr. Duncan Mochama. Let's appreciate Mr. Duncan akichukua kiti yake. Tupigeni makofi Mr. Duncan. That is Mr. Duncan Mochama. Karibu ndugu yangu. And then on this panel we'll have Madam Faith Atiti. Faith Atiti. Faith Atiti is the head of strategy, monitoring and research at Diamond Trust Bank. Let's appreciate Faith Atiti. Tumpigeni makofi hadi afike. And then we'll also have Miss Diana Sifuna. Diana Sifuna. Oh, thank you. She is the CEO of Jonathan Jackson Foundation. Let's appreciate Diana Sifuna. And we'll also have Mr. Vincent Ogaya. Mr. Vincent Ogaya over there is the lead research and policy at the Kenya Climate Innovation Center. Tumpigeni makofi. Tumpigeni makofi, Mr. Vincent Ogaya. And then we'll have Mr. Peter Kagia Odeni. Mr. Peter Kagia Odeni, MBA. He's a certified financial advisor with APSEA. And then we'll have, lastly, Mr. Joseph Kimani. Mr. Joseph Kimani is the program manager with the Danish Embassy in Nairobi. Let's appreciate Mr. Joseph Kimani. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is our panel. We are going to have a 1 hour of discussion around private sector actors as drivers of PFM. And like we said, our topic will be around an enabling business environment as a stimulant for economic growth. Ningependa kuomba watu wa National Assembly hapa tuingie kwenye Senate. Tuingieni kwenye Senate by camera. Tafadhali, honorable members. Najua nyinyi ndio the upper house, depending on how you. Ama mnasikia joto huko? Huko kuna joto? Sawa. To occupy the front seats then. Acha to occupy hizi za mbele so that we can have engagement. Wale wenye wako nyuma, tafadhali, let's occupy the front seats so that we get to hear the conversation. And if you have a burning question, burning concern, burning issue, you'll get a sticky note. Just do it, put it down, and somebody will pick it or you will give it to me. Tukuweke hapa. Iko sawa? Let me take it back to Mr. Muchama. Thank you, my brother. Take it over.
Mic test. Mic test. I would like you just to go back to the audience because I've calculated the time. We need to get a register. Yeah, so I've calculated the time. It will take about 6 minutes just to get a register. So just mention your name and the organization you come from very fast.
Oh, that's great.
Achar Salome, Center of Economic and Governance.
Awesome.
Janet Ngobalu, Christian Aid, Kenya.
Awesome.
Samuel Williams, Christian Aid.
Awesome.
Keith Muhachi, Africa Youth Trust.
Fauzia Hussein, Christian Aid, Kenya.
Yakero Morage, Uraya Trust.
Josephine Naikara, Uraya Trust.
Paul Kimani, AYLF. Abraham Rugo, Bajeti Hub.
Awesome.
Edward Munene, Heraf.
John Kinuthia, Bajeti Hub.
Justin Wamboe, Bajeti Hub.
Commander John, Uraya Trust.
Pauline Daudi, Uraya Trust.
Josephine Nyamai, Budgeto Global.
Rodney Lulu, APSEA.
Rina Atuma, Population Reference Bureau.
Opewe Brian, Community Empowerment and Development Center.
Lois Warenga, United Disabled Persons of Kenya.
Awesome.
Joshua Karani, Justice Advocacy and Empowerment Center.
Mercy Murithi, JEG.
Rose Wendy, Africa Youth Trust.
Noreen Kaleji, Africa Youth Trust.
Kelvin, Africa Youth Trust.
Sheila Kobia, Budget Talk Global.
Kiss, Abonyezakis, Africa Youth Trust.
Dominic, APSEA.
Charles Minyaro, Kenya Citizen.
Njonganga Munga Wananchi.
Onesimus Black Coffee Network.
Gichana Katiba Institute.
Katiba Institute.
Diana, Danish Youth Sounding Board.
Donald Juma, Danish Embassy Youth Sounding Board.
Steve Kinyanjui, Swadep Construction Company Limited. Duncan Kirui, CHEB.
Crispa Chebet, Christian Aid, Kenya.
Christian Aid, Kenya.
Japet Ojicho, Integrated Development Facility.
Kenya.
Faith Kilu, UPDK.
Eric Ogando, Uraye.
Evans Kibet, ZGG and Rift Valley Budget Hub.
Bansi Kubuda, Center for Transformational Leadership.
Vincent Tanui, ZGG.
Andenga Dan Paul, NEC Hub and Oraya Trust.
Nancy Watoro, a curious citizen.
Awesome. Is that everyone?
Yeah.
Awesome. Now we know who we are talking to. We know, you know who is in the audience. And after this, of course, it's a bit of lunch break or the next session. Now you know who to talk to. My name is Duncan Mochama. I'm in the startup world now, technology. And right now I'm interested in direct foreign investment. So I have done a lot of youth leadership work. And I'm excited to just understand, engage the panel, because we have a very, very powerful panel. We have researchers, we have lecturers, we have people who have dealt with Vision 2030, who are looking at the climate. We have people who are in the grassroots. So we are going to look at all that. So maybe my panelist, and because it's Women's History Month, so I would like to start with Diana. Diana, I know you've enabled me personally to play basketball in the Mashinani or many places. You've built infrastructure, you've worked with Youth Agenda. What drives you? What drives you to do all that? And can you just give us a brief history about yourself for you to be on this stage? Yeah, and this discussion will take, ladies and gentlemen, about 45 minutes, so we'll be a little bit punchy. Go ahead, Diana.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Happy International Women's Month. I know our Women's Day is coming on the 8th. As you've heard, my name is Diana Sifuna. I'm very happy to see many organizations that I have worked with in the audience today. And those of you who've not heard about me or what I do, I'm happy to introduce myself to you. So I work in an organization called the Jonathan Jackson Foundation. And this is a local philanthropic organization based in Nairobi County, working specifically in the informal settlements to empower young people or persons who are not in employment, education, or training. Majority of the workers that, the beneficiaries that we support in the community are vulnerable members who have probably gone through the formal systems of, correctional facilities, and they come out here and they're not able to get decent jobs because maybe they're not able to access the certificate of good conduct that is required. We have helped about 700 young people to have jobs between 2019 to date, and we continue to do more using partnerships and other supporters, private funders that support the Jonathan Jackson Foundation. As you've heard Muthama say, we also, in our work in penetrating the informal settlement, we were a relatively new foundation. We decided to help invest in the community through sports. We bought a local football team called Nairobi City Stars. How many of you are football fans? Yeah, do you know Simba wa Nairobi? That's Nairobi City Stars. That's a club that we support here at the foundation. In addition to that, we also build basketball courts. We have an ambitious target of building 25 courts in Nairobi in 5 clusters. So each cluster will have 5 courts. Currently, we've only built 4 out of the 25, and therefore we're inviting partners. In the past, we've had the Nairobi County government that has given us access up to 17 potential sites for us to activate by building the infrastructure and allowing the young people to come and engage in sports, not only for professional development, but also for just fun, psychological support. So that's what I do. In the past, I've worked with Youth Agenda. I have served in the Youth Sounding Board of the Danish Embassy, an opportunity that I'm incredibly very grateful for, because it expanded my vision of working within Nairobi and Kenya with young people to actually thinking continentally. So I feel like through the embassy, I became a Pan-Africanist through the engagement that I've had with fellow active young citizens across the continent. So I'm very glad to interact with you today. Please, let's discuss more after this. And also in the audience, my colleague, Alvin, was not able to introduce himself. He's in our communications department, and I thank him for supporting me at this point. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Diana. Yeah, go ahead, Faith. You have a wealth of experience. I don't know, I've never seen someone with a wealth of experience in research, in the financial sector. I think you have done something with the Nairobi Stock Exchange. Please go ahead and introduce yourself.
You probably haven't lived long enough. Huh? There's more, look around. Good afternoon, everyone. And certainly happy International Women's Month for all the ladies. We are really privileged and proud to be here. My name is Faith Atiti. I do work with Diamond Trust Bank. I hope we do have some of our customers here. Yay! At least Diana is here, but we are happy to onboard as many of you because we are a bank you can work with, a bank you can trust, a bank that is also looking for those opportunities to make that big social impact in the community. We traditionally known to be very strong on the SMEs, and knowing this is really the backbone of our economy, and of course, beyond agriculture. We are very keen to deepen our SME. We are work with SMEs within the country, within some of the spaces you do work with. So I'm happy to engage as many of you as possible for any areas of collaboration that we can explore. Just as like Diana said, we are also big on sustainability, creating social impact within the community. And I've seen many of you here within that space. So if there's any opportunity we can explore for partnership, I'm happy to engage. For my experience, yes, I did work within the investment space for much of my younger days. So I have quite a bit of experience in investment. Currently, I'm heading the research function at Diamond Trust Bank. And this is pretty much getting to appreciate what's happening around us, what you, as our customers and potential customers, require from us, because it's a mutual relationship. How can we help you to serve the people you do serve better? What are these areas that we can collaborate on? How can we also just deepen access to credit from a financing perspective? So I'm very privileged to be here, and I look forward to a very interactive session.
Awesome. You can give to Vincent. Vincent, quickly just introduce yourself. I know you've worked a lot in enabling the future employers. That is with your work with NAYA. You have globe-trotted, and now you're looking at the climate innovation. So just quickly introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Vincent Ogaya, supporting research and policy at Kenya Climate Innovation Center. So basically what that entails is at Kenya Climate Innovation Center, our business is in ensuring that climate innovations are able to scale and are able to commercialize. We pride ourselves as the first climate innovation center in the world, courtesy of support from the World Bank and courtesy of DANIDA as well, and other development partners. So as a developing country, we are faced with climate challenges that require mitigation and also adaptation. The solution lies within what is within the private sector. Solutions in terms of how we produce, how we consume, and a lot of things in between, which can only be taken care of by the businesses that are coming through from time to time. So on that basis, there are a lot of challenges. Someone can be an innovator, is not a business person. They need to get their product out to the market and to be able to sell. So that is why we exist as an organization. And for my role is to help with sector insights, lessons, knowledge, and to also ensure that the innovations that come through from time to time inform the kind of policies that are needed for them to scale. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Bonapita, maybe quickly introduce yourself as well. I know you have a lot of background in insurance, and now you're looking at employees or professionals in the country. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. Good afternoon, everyone. My name, as has been mentioned, is Peter Kagia, currently serving at the Association of Professional Societies of East Africa. And this is basically the umbrella body of all professional organs or societies in East Africa, and particularly in Kenya. We have almost 34 professionals, and probably you are by extensions members in those, especially for those who are already registered and are practicing. We have examples of Law Society of Kenya, HR, Insurance Institute of Kenya and such, but I'm also serving as a member of the Board of Capacity Building for the young professionals who wants to tie up with the experienced professionals in various fields, and making sure that there's sustainability in terms of skills transfer. I'm also dabbling in currently serving the insurance fraternity as the Deputy Director of the Insurance Institute of Kenya, which is also the umbrella body of all insurance companies. The pride I have is that we have been focusing on issues of business sustainability, having also been practicing as an insurer and pension analyst, and basically retirement benefits and fund management in terms of issues of business stability in the private sector. And the significance of it is that private sector is actually a major contributor in terms of the business or public finance, in terms of the contributions that they're having. They employ actually almost 2.5 million out of the 3 million directly, who are actually in the formal employment, and also extensively contribute to almost supporting the bigger population of the employment fraternity of around 20 million. You're talking about 17.5 million, which is actually in the informal sector. So yes, there's work to be done from the professional point of view.
Awesome. Let me go to Joseph. Joseph, your experience, you lecture, you have done speaking engagements, you have done a lot of research. Please go ahead and introduce more about yourself.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm very, very happy to be amongst friends on the panel and also in this, amongst the audience. As you've said, I'm Joseph Kimani. I have the privilege of serving as the Program Manager for Democratic Governance at the Embassy of Denmark here in Kenya. Denmark has and continues to be a very, very good friend of Kenya. Denmark has been in Kenya for the last 60 years. 60. That's a very long time. It's been 60 years of great friendship, shared values, and at a personal level, it's a real honor serving Denmark here. I also have the privilege of working very closely with the Youth Sounding Board of the Embassy. Diana has served there with great distinction. I have some members over there. Part of the work that we do is working very closely with a number of organizations across the country. Uraia, very well represented here, very strongly represented. Other things that I do, you rightly mentioned that I do lecturing. I've been adjunct faculty at the United States International University, Africa, for the last 10 years. I lecture in international relations. So that is also something else that I'm very proud of. So I try to work 25 hours a day. So I'm really looking forward to the discussions here. And thank you so much once again.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. Let me start with you. Let's start actually from outside. Do you think Kenya is leveraging all these international partnerships today we are discussing about public finance management? Do you think we are actually leveraging international partnerships to strengthen our PFM policies? And do we even have a good business environment, and how can we leverage these international partnerships?
Thank you for that question. It's a mixed bag, essentially. It is a mixed bag. The way you look at it is that we haven't had a very constant pattern. There are times that we have leveraged that, very strongly, but then there have been times whereby it has sort of plateaued. So it is really a mixed bag. Perhaps we should ask ourselves, why has that been the case? Why haven't we been able to find a constant motion moving forward? There are certain barriers that have been there, and those barriers are not unique to Kenya. It's important for us to recognize that. But how do we fix those particular barriers? So the first one is integrity. Integrity in the systems, integrity amongst the people that are involved in the whole architecture of the economy. That's very, very important. The other element is reducing red tape, bureaucracy. It's very important. I'm sure the audience and my fellow panelists agree here. whenever you encounter a lot of bureaucracy, then of course that constrains the ability to do business. The other barrier that is very, very key is lack of a predictable policy and legal regime. There are times where there have been changes in the legal regime, the policy regime. There's need for predictability. That's very, very important for anyone that wants to invest here. And then the other very key point is perhaps orienting Kenya's diplomatic representation much, much more to be business oriented. I know there's a lot of work that is going on. I am aware that Kenya's embassies across the world, their marching orders are clear, is do as much as you can to engage the foreign capitals so that much more happens here. That's work in progress. That's a positive thing. All I can say is that to be able to leverage international partnerships, Kenya must be much, much more engaged, speaking for Kenya very clearly and eloquently across the world in all those various capitals. Thank you.
Awesome. Before you give out the mic, maybe one last question. Denmark also is known for using their private sector. Is there any lessons that we can learn from your engagement that Kenya, the government, the private sector can learn from?
Yes, that there are many good lessons, and I also hasten to add that there are also things that Danish business also learns from Kenya. You know, it's a two-way traffic. Denmark is not perfect, no country is. Having said that, the first one is zero tolerance to corruption. Wow. You know, Denmark, that is very clear, zero tolerance, and it is there in practice. So that's one thing. The second thing is that Denmark is a high-trust society. High-trust society. Many other parts of the world is quite the opposite, low trust. But what do you mean when you talk about high trust? It means that you trust the word of a public servant, you trust the word of somebody in the private sector, you trust the word of a citizen. So that's another thing that can be learned from. The third one is a very clear and predictable policy and legal regime. There is predictability. You know right from the start when you want to do business, you know all the steps. They are predictable. They are not going to shift. The fourth thing is there is no such thing as patronage when you talk about Danish business. It is really built on meritocracy. Then the final one is a constant quest to innovation. There is a lot of innovation. Denmark is geographically a very, very small country. The population is barely 6 million. But you see, it's a country that punches way above its weight because of the innovation that goes on. There are so many things that Denmark invests. So those are some of the lessons that Denmark can share, not only with Kenya, but the rest of the world.
Thank you so much for being punchy and actually giving out the recommendations. Peter Kagia, I can see you opening your water, but let me go back to you. You have heard what Joseph has said. What is the role of professional association? Now you sit in insurance, you sit at professionals body. What is the role of professional associations in ensuring that these fiscal policies actually work and our businesses actually thrive?
Thank you so much. I think it will draw me to the session that was done by PwC just before the end of the year on a CEO's forum. And one of the things that became a concern, especially in the sub-Saharan, of which Kenya is the issue of the business sustainability. And most of the CEOs out of that report are showing that issues of regulation and predictability is so much key, is a worrying thing, especially in their operations. So for sustainability, we bank on three key things. One is the issue of the mother nature, the planet. How can we sustain it? How can we maintain it so that it's there for us tomorrow? The second thing is the issue of people, because all organizations are actually serving people at the center of everything. And the third one is actually the profitability, especially for sustainable business realization. So sustainability, profitability becomes one very key. But now, as we look at the issues of the revenue generation and we look at the sustainability, there's a very tight balance between the two. One is that in terms of issues to do with the revenue collection, the government has to operate with specific details of how to collect revenue. This is actually looking at the fiscal policies through taxation, through issues to do with fees and tolls. And every private sector would like a thriving force where they are in to do business tomorrow. So the concern has been so much on the issues to do with predictability in terms of the working and operating environment, the tax regime, so that when they do their planning, they factor in some of those. Of course, factor in some issues of disruptions that could come on board, which may not be within the control of the government. The role of a professional is very key. One, the professional is building capacity of those people, because even those people who are doing policies, we get involved in those. Our RCS actually is a member of the ISPAC, and quite a number of them are in those people in the government who are drawing the policies. They draw a lot also from the professional bodies in terms of monetary issues and fiscal policies. One thing that has been a challenge is and mostly you look at we look at the revenue generation. All these are pegged on various plans, and every government that comes on board has a manifesto. And when they come onto power, they need to deliver on those manifestos. So the translation of those manifestos into the policies. We remember the previous government had the issues of the 4 agenda. We have now the bottom-up economic transformation agenda. We voted them inside, so they have to deliver. So there must be sources of revenue. The good thing that we have, and the advantage that we have, is that we have the issue of the constitution, our constitution, which is so robust, and actually enabling every person, especially the issue with public participation. And one thing that as professionals we do, encourage all our professionals to be focusing on those key areas of public participation, so that they bring in and hybrid those ideas that they have, so that they are put in place in the course of this process. The constitution gives us very many avenues where we can actually participate in at the point of formation of the budget and all the process up to right now, what we're doing now. So if you look at Article 10 of the Constitution, actually supporting this area. So we encourage professionals, but one, you can only contribute to what you know. So the capacity building in each area of those is very important. So that is how we actually have some debates, especially with the APSEA platform, to ensure that we do that, so that we have meaningful contribution towards the fiscal policies that could actually help in balancing between, the delicate balance between revenue generation and business sustainability, especially the private sector.
Awesome. Before you give out the mic, we have seen Gen Z's angry, we have seen the civil society angry. Are professionals ever angry about what is happening in the country?
Thanks. I think sometimes we are reactive. And one thing that I need to underscore is that the Gen Zs and the millennials are making almost 60% of our workforce. They actually the people who pay our bills through their taxes. And if you look at the way, even including use of phone calls, they are contributing. So, and they're the people of tomorrow, and they're the markets of tomorrow. So they have all the rights to bring up the issues. The only thing is that the encouragement would be that we actively participate in the process, build them on board, so that we actually pass the mantle we pass the baton to the right generation, so that at least they take control of it.
Awesome, thank you for that. And when you said about passing the baton, Diana, actually you are involved at the grassroots level, not only supporting professionals, but also SMEs. What is the role of these organizations like yourself, or philanthropic organizations like yourself, in promoting this business environment?
Thanks, Mchama. For me, I would have been much happier, I'd be much happier to see a lot of Gen Zs and millennials in the audience. Not that I don't appreciate the current audience we have, we really thank you. We're saying next time you come to this tent and it's budget discussions, and we have to organize and we are able to meaningfully engage with the governance structures in the country, please tag them along so that they can understand how systems work. As we all know, we had the introductions going around. Most of us are in the non-profit sector, so most of us actually run programs to sensitize the public and do advocacy for policy change. However, if the youth, the young people are not present in these discussions, we will be reactive, as Peter has said. We will be reacting to things. Although the reaction helped, that finance bill was going to come and pass in all its form. And even though it's being implemented kidogo kidogo, at least we stopped something monumental. And we actually saw that across the world, we were not the only young people agitating from the country. It was, there was Japan, there's other places in the world where Gen Zs are also uprising because of technology and how we are able to get there. So maybe to highlight what you're asking me about impact investing and how we actually economically engage the youth in the community. For us, I think we do the groundwork before you guys come in. And I'm saying you guys respectfully because you actually work with young people on civic engagement and public participation. But we do the empowering of them to be able, for themselves to be able to put food on the table. What do I mean by this? I mean, if you come to run your program in the Nairobi informal settlement, and that young person, the lady, the gentleman, has not had a meal, will they come and meaningfully participate? The answer is no. What will their motivation be in participating in public processes and all these things? And no wonder sometimes they're bought like the politicians with. It's because they are economically disempowered. So what we do is that we empower that young person, ensure that they have a meaningful employment or they have a means of earning a living. That is why we run the program called Jenga Biznam Taani, where we come, engage the young people, and we ask them, it's a co-creation thing. We ask them, what businesses would you like to do? The only requirement we need from you is that you organize into groups, you get registered so that there's a local level of accountability, so that when we are donating the capital goods or giving you access to banks that will give you interest-free loans, you actually have a local level of accountability. People will know you got 100,000 and the purpose of that money was to start a business, and that business is supposed to help create employment for others around you. So I feel like even when we want, there was a session I was in where everyone was talking about 2027, because politicians are already projecting 2027 and what they'll want to do. But before 2027, before the leaders come and start lying to our young people, how about we ensure that the young people are empowered, they know the processes, and by 2027, they will not be hungry enough for 1,000 or 2,000 shillings to change their mind and vote for leaders who are not competent or leaders who are not going to abide by the PFM principles, which is in the chapter 12 of the Constitution, which I feel like a precursor to it is actually chapter 6, which Kimani has alluded to, the integrity, accountability, the values that we truly need to have as a society for us to effectively manage our public resources. So those are my contributions. I'm just requesting, let's bring young people into these discussions. When you understand what public resource management means, what that looks like, please don't sit with the knowledge, bring young people, help them understand. So even when they are tweeting on those platforms, they are tweeting sensible things, they're organizing and mobilizing, and whenever they lack jobs and maybe means of earning a living, send them to our foundation. We see how to engage with them so that they can create the businesses to have their own jobs. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Very well put. Faith, you alluded to DTB actually helping SMEs in their businesses and actually making them grow. What do you think, and I see, and you, when you introduce yourself, you have a very rich history, experience in the finance. What do you think is the role of financial sector in bridging this gap with the public financial management or the fiscal policies? Mic check.
All right, that's a really good question. As a financial sector and our role with regards to public finance management, our license may limit just how much we go out there in terms of engaging on such matters as public finance management. However, there are indirect ways that banks and of course DTB does contribute to this such discourse. For instance, we've been very deliberate in propagating financial awareness. We hold seminars where we do engage our customers on issues that are happening within the country, especially these public finance management discussions. We mostly come in, at the tail end of it, probably creating a more proactive environment where, we can engage with the public, the private sector with regards to matters, public policy, and especially in this context of public finance management. But let me twist that a bit just to sort of show how banks indeed do come in, because the whole idea was how do we then create an enabling environment that makes this whole conversation much easier, or rather, it also improves the scope of public finance management. And like I said, I like what Diana says, like we really need, organized groups to work with as banks. Right? So if it's SMEs, if the people you're working with, and banks have become very innovative, especially from a digital perspective, in a way to create platforms and channels through which we can create access to finances that then empowers people well enough to be able to make meaningful contribution. Of course, economically grow themselves, and the more economically you empower, the more likely you're likely to raise your voice when it comes to such engagements in a more meaningful way. So we're looking for those aggregated, and from DTB perspective, and we've had, we're looking at, those aggregators. You bring people together, and through the aggregator, we can extend some credit. Because they also help us monitor this capital, it becomes very easy to, extend credit and, of course, create empowerment within the society. So for banks, they are willing to work with a larger population to empower economically, and also just make this whole public finance management issue much lighter. Create that awareness about what's happening within our space, but also don't stop there. Also provide build financial capacity, and also provide finances that the people require to actually keep the day on, and be able to participate meaningfully. Yeah.
Awesome. Let me go to Vincent. Just like always, we always think about climate and our weather as a last option, right? And we position Kenya not only geographically, but also our weather as a conducive business environment. That's one of the factors. What do you think we can do about structured public-private discussions in actually enabling this sustainable economic growth?
Yeah, thank you. For businesses, they can do all they can. They can have the finances, they can produce the best products, they can have the markets, and everything they need. But if the environment is not enabling for that business to go on, it has been mentioned earlier on predictability of the policy and regulatory environment, which is a big challenge in our country. And so that is why there is need for structured dialogues, and more so in an economy like ours, which is largely informal. Our largest employers are in the informal sector. The micro, small, and medium enterprises constitute close to 80% of all businesses in Kenya, according to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics. And that then means that because of that informality, there is the challenge of structured dialogue. And when we have it, we are able to showcase the kind of opportunities that we have, the business opportunities that we have within our country, the kind of innovations that we have that then are able to inform the policy, legal and regulatory regime. So that is why that's one important aspect of having those structured dialogue. The business people are able to say, these are the opportunities that we have within our country, these are business models, these are our, and then again, when I talk about innovation, it's not just about the technology or the products or the services, but it's also about business models. Business models emerge out of the opportunities that are there. But then we always say at KCIC that innovation comes before policy. So whether it's that innovative business model or innovative technology, it will come before policy. And so, as an institution that works with innovators, we have seen painfully businesses fall simply because the environment is not enabling in terms of the policy regime. And so that is one importance, but again, it's also important that businesses are enabled to comply. You know, whatever is existing in terms of policies, if they are not aware, they may not be able to fully comply. I'll give you an example. What we are doing with Nairobi County and NEMA currently for some waste management enterprises in Nairobi County, and we are rolling that countrywide so that then the businesses are enabled to comply, not in a harsh environment where you have a cat and mouse game, but you have guided compliance or assisted compliance, and also appreciating the fact that because our MSME sector is short of resources, can they be enabled to then comply, you know, in a way that is, in a way that is, you know, in a way that takes them, it can be done over time, but eventually they will be there, as opposed to saying, we have all these and we want you to comply now. That can only happen when we have structured dialogues. Already we have done one in Nairobi, and we are hoping to do that across the country. Without the structure to bring in, you know, the private sector and the government on the table, probably sometimes the government may not know what is, you know, what is going on there. They may not know what is going on in the day-to-day business environment. It is only through those structured dialogues that then they can be able to appreciate and then assist them to comply over time, as opposed to just a one-off thing. And it's true that our business environment is not so good. You know, it was not so good prior to 2022. It has not been so good post 2022. We work with some border with some border counties, and you find that sometimes doing business across border is easier than doing business within your country. Just like what Canada was saying the other day, that sometimes doing businesses within provinces within Canada is harder than doing international trade. And that is true of our case here. So it's a way of seeing how we then enable those structured dialogues to address the issues, so that it should not be hard for someone to, you know, move from Nairobi, pass Mlolongo and do business there and come back. It should not be that difficult. And that can only happen if the tax regime is predictable, the policy, legal and regulatory regime is predictable, and that can also be contributed to by structured dialogues that bring these stakeholders together, and appreciating the fact that in an informal economy, sometimes organizing people becomes difficult. Organizing these stakeholders becomes difficult. But then we need to find innovative ways of enabling those kind of structured conversations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, there we go. Thank you. I can feel the passion in what you do. And I'll come back to my panelists, so prepare maybe a 30 seconds closing remarks. But let me take 2 questions, and whatever questions you take, then you can incorporate it in your 30-second close. So any questions from the audience? I hear there is National Assembly, and then there is Senate. Yeah? I'm looking around, and I have 2 mics going around. Okay. Going once, going twice. Ah, there we go.
We have one from the National Assembly.
Okay.
From the Senate.
This is Senate. Go ahead.
Senate, yeah.
Yeah, very, very brief and punchy.
Okay, my name is Kelvin. I work for Africa Youth Trust, and I wanted to direct my question to the person who said the DTB woman, right? I didn't get your name, rather.
Faith.
Faith. Okay, I am a customer, so you don't have to worry. I wanted to ask whether the foundation, whether you people have a foundation, and what you're doing to at least get to the informal sectors. We have a movement called Young Urban Women, where we are empowering them to fight corruption through feministic approaches. However, even after doing all this, there is need for them to have a livelihood, and especially even those who will support as survivors of GBV and every other thing. How can you as a bank come in to Africa Youth Trust and find a way where you can support these young women?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. Is there any question?
Yeah, we have one.
One more.
I think, Abraham, here, I really wanted to hear something about how do we see the role of private sector in enabling the people to be more productive? Because what we see is they are very active in spaces where they are advancing capital to government.
Okay.
I really, especially from the innovation guy, I think it will be very, very interesting.
Awesome. Thank you. I saw one hand, and then that will be it.
Many of the support that non-state actors in Kenya receive is from mainly abroad. We don't see the hand of private sector in Kenya in supporting the non-state actors. So what do you think can be done to ensure that we are able to get more support, especially defending rights and freedom in Kenya? What is the check in terms of support from the private sector in Kenya?
Awesome. Thank you. So maybe just 30 seconds wrap up, and I think I'll start with you, Kimani.
Right. Thank you very much. First of all, is to say thank you once again for the invitation. I am confident that any person in the audience qualifies equally to be on this panel. So thank you. I don't take it for granted being here. It's just to say that there is a lot to be proud of, but then again, we also recognize that there is work to be done. That's clear from the panel. And I am sure Denmark, Kenya, and indeed other countries around the world have seized of that matter. The economy is not easy. You know, it's always there are always various dynamics that keep evolving. But what's important is being brutally honest about the situation that is there, but also having hope and competence to be able to fix the challenges that are there. Thank you.
Thank you. To the gentleman that asked the question to DB, Kevin. Okay. I'd like to extend the invitation to the group you're talking about that you're managing as Africa Youth Trust. You can bring them to the Jonathan Jackson Foundation, and if they are vulnerable that they need a means of livelihood, then we can incorporate them in our Jenga Biznam Tani program. Abraham asked a very good question on private sector support. No, that was the last question, private sector supporting non-state actors. I'd like to maybe address the non-state actors, and that's majority of us. Have you approached the private sector in Kenya? I ask this because luckily our founder, Mr. Jonathan Jackson, is a Kenyan-born British, and therefore we have the advantage of sitting or becoming members of the British Chamber of Commerce, which has many business operations in Kenya, many members who have business operations in Kenya. After we did a presentation at one of their AGMs, we currently receive 3% of profit from one of the companies that is based in Kenya every single month. it doesn't matter the amount. In fact, it just matters that we have a private sector player who liked the presentation we made on economic empowerment and sports development in informal settlements enough to commit 3% of profit from a very small line of his business to be coming to us every month. Do we ask the questions? I also managed to sit in a panel, not in a panel, in one of the meetings that was happening with another non-state actor. And I sat with their board member and I was actually complaining about fundraising in Kenya. I was like, you know, must we always go abroad to look for resources? All these companies operating in Kenya, they should be able to support us. And the answer I got is that you do not come to our boardrooms to ask for money. And when you come, you do not present a good deal when it comes to impact investment, because their targets nowadays is not qualitative. I'm not saying we have not done it. I'm saying that the private actors in Kenya nowadays are leaning towards venture philanthropy, and this is where they're sort of looking at grants, applying a lens of investment in them, like investment principles. It's not a return on investment in terms of value for money, but it's a return on investment in terms of value of impact that you will achieve. I recently have another local donor who, you know, grants the Jonathan Jackson Foundation, who told me, I'm no longer interested in your quantitative reporting. I want to know how many lives you've touched and how much impact you have achieved in the community. So I'm a beneficiary of many local philanthropy organizations or many local donors who are actually in the private sector, and I would say let's also be proactive in engaging them. Let's request for meetings in their boardrooms and not sit behind the Zoom calls. Let's look for them, let's nurture the relationship, and let's convince them to give us a portion of their profits. We're not even asking for their revenue and what they ought to give to their stakeholders, and their stakeholders would not mind. You have seen what Safaricom Foundation have done. They do an amazing job in Kenya. Again, I speak as a beneficiary of them. In 2022, they gave us 2 million shillings when we did a COVID response program for distributing food in Kenya. The 2.1 million meals we distributed in 2020 could not have been possible if we did it alone. Private sector in Kenya came full board. We were even hesitating as a foundation whether we should receive the grant from EABL Foundation because of the values we had. But then we remembered that hunger is a bigger problem, and we accepted that 2 million donation. So my friend, let's rethink that. Awesome. I think that also forms my remark. I'm just passionate about economic empowerment and active citizenry. Thank you very much.
That is amazing. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I think one thing that we need to underscore is the issue of the role of a professional in governance, and especially regarding the issues with public finance for purposes of issues of sustainable development, which is actually pegged on the people. Prosperity comes on very much. As professionals, we underscore the importance of the rule of law, constitutionalism, and above all, as we say, the fear of God. So our constitution is very progressive, and probably I would encourage all of us, as not only professionals as such, to participate actively in areas where we are called that our opinions are being sought. Like on 14th, I think on 14th, on the day of Valentine, I think there was something that was happening in Parliament. We were having the budget policy statement being presented. And the question is, what contributions did we make as such? Have we actually are aware of it? We also have issues to do with fiscal policies related to tax management. We have the tax management policy. And probably it has some good things, it has some things that we are not happy about. We have an avenue to actually engage so that we have a very productive documents that could be running to help us actually maintain that aspect of business sustainability within the context of touching the lives of many people, the Kenyans, not only the professionals, but all, because professionals are also serving the interests of the society.
Awesome. Thank you.
Indeed, the private sector can play a very catalytic role when it comes to economic growth, especially where government spending is very limited. And we appreciate as a country, we'll stay in that space for a while. And certainly it is a bit difficult for private sector to effectively play their role in an environment where the policy landscape is very unpredictable. And that also applies for banks because they operate within the same environment. You wake up, there's a new tax that's levied on your employees that you as a business you have to match. There is a threat that because 1 or 2 is happening, then we'll impose this regulation, whether it's the, interest rate caps and things like that to control or contain, guide how business is done, which is mostly happens very haphazardly, and it's more reactive than proactive. But I am aware there are many conversations that are happening from just a banking sector perspective through the Kenya Bankers Association to try and streamline and create some predictability around the policies imposed, especially those that target financial sector, knowing the role that financial sector can play in, catalyzing economic activity, creating this awareness, and of course, even on the public finance side, because we are one of the sector that pays the highest taxes to the government. But that said, yes, we do have a role, and from business sustainability, we appreciate we have to work with individuals, we have to work with SMEs, we have to empower the vulnerable within the society, and even from a regulatory perspective, sustainability is now becoming mainstream. As you do your business, you have to give back. You have to, empower the society around you, the people, the community within which you operate. And to your question, sorry, I don't remember your name either. It's nothing personal. It's no payback. But yes, as DTB, we do engage with such institutions. Like I said, I think we're one of the banks where sustainability is actually one of our core strategic pillars. And sustainability in this case includes the whole ESG component, the environmental, the social, and we're always looking for partners to work. And I agree with Diana, you just don't show up, you don't ask.
So he can come to you after this.
Yeah, as long as you have a compelling case where there's demonstrable impact to those you're supporting, I think as institutions we are happy to be on board. Yeah.
Yeah, so Diana spoke passionately about the private sector and their role. Of course, just to add that the private sector is really enabling productivity. They catalyze value chains, they catalyze supply chains, only that most of the time this impact is never documented. For us, for example, the enterprises we support, if you are in agribusiness and you are doing aggregation, for example, we look at how you work with the farmers. That farmer that probably does not have a lot of knowledge on legal issues and contract issues, but then you are enabled to have contracts with them so that then you can also give them better pricing, and that alone makes other people productive along that chain. You have, for example, legal experts, tax experts along that. So in addition to what Diana mentioned, that is what I wanted to add.
Awesome.
That it's a big role. But then for us as Kenya Climate Innovation Center, we still continue supporting climate innovations, supporting enterprises, pursuing adaptation and mitigation efforts, and of course ensuring that business is driven by the sustainability, the element of people, planet, and profits, so that none is left behind.
Thank you so much, my panelists. Maybe a round of applause to the panelists. I think they've been amazing. And thank you to the audience as well. Have a nice evening. Back to you, MC.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bwana John, and your panel. Maybe you can just move in front here for a group photo. Cameras. In the meantime, DJ. Tutashuka chini. Shuka chini. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think that was a good engagement. And like we said earlier on as we are starting, if you have any burning issue that you need clarity, we have sticky notes. Just do a note and put it here. We'll respond to everything. This conversation is not just in here. We are having online conversations. We are going to engage on our pages. And of course, we are having an afternoon session from 2 p.m. So we are going to break for some refreshments and of course walk around and see, make friends, network. But by 2 p.m. we are converging for an afternoon session where we're going to look at countering disinformation and misinformation. And we have a heavy panel for that one. So ladies and gentlemen, you can't wait to have this discussion. Misinformation and disinformation. Tuko tayari jamani? Tuko tayari. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, MC. I'd like to welcome all of you to the main stage where we're going to have live band for the next 1 hour during the break. Enjoy the music and take advantage of the food court for your refreshments, lunch and bitings. Let's all converge here at 2 p.m. like Ken Bab talked about. And let's go down there and enjoy the music from the live band. Asanteni sana. PDF 2025. Form the dialogue. Hashtag come to Bonge in the afternoon.
Anybody will won't fight you. And they come, they already know. I'll be by